This conference will now be recorded.
So welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for this peer-to-peer networking meeting. This is around Fickers assessments for child development homes. So we have some special guest speakers tonight, but first I'm going to do just a little bit of housekeeping. So if you haven't used GoToMeeting before, there are buttons on the bottom left-hand side of your screen that will allow you to mute or unmute your microphone. So at first, kind of while Melissa's talking a little bit, she might ask you to engage a little bit, but also while she's kind of talking to you about the process and things, you can just remain muted. Unless you have something to share, you can go ahead and unmute then. But if you remain muted when other people are talking, then that minimizes any background noise. And you can also utilize the chat box. So if you have anything that you want to share or ask a question about, you can go ahead and put that in the chat box. And then the settings wheel, if you're having any audio issues, that's up in the right-hand corner. So I will be keeping an eye on that chat box to make sure that all of your questions and comments are addressed throughout our meeting tonight. We are so glad that you are able to be on with us. A lot of you are child care providers. A lot of you are child care resource and referral staff, which is nice to have you with us as well and just learning right along with us. If you don't know me, my name is Julie Davis, and I am the Community Development Specialist here in Central Iowa. So really, I just educate and advocate for quality child care in different communities, and also try to provide the opportunity for providers to get together and network around a variety of topics, sometimes just about how it's going, and other times we talk about health and safety. And tonight we have been hearing from some providers that they have questions about their ERS assessment or their Fickers assessment. I'm not a QRS specialist by any means, so that's why I've kind of wrangled in my friends here to help me out. So Jesse is the QRS specialist. Jesse, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. So like Julie said, I'm Jesse, and I'm the QRS specialist here in Central Iowa for our 21 counties. And so it's good to see all of the cameras and the names. A lot of you, I've been to your program, so it's nice to see you here tonight. And I'm here, to answer any QRS questions and just to kind of learn along with you guys as well. And, we're excited to have the Iowa State staff here to kind of teach us more about the Fickers transition, especially. I know you guys have questions about that, so I encourage you to ask the questions that you have, because you've got great resources here to help you tonight, and I look forward to learning right along with you all.
Great, thanks, Jesse. So tonight from ISU, we have Melissa Wagner and Jamie Smith on. So Melissa, do you want to start? Give just a little brief introduction of yourself and kind of what you do.
Sure. I'm Melissa Wagner. I work with Iowa State University Extension and Outreach. I'm based in the campus office. I work with the early childhood programs with Human Sciences Extension Outreach, basically everything environment rating scales. My main focus is the trainings that you may be familiar with, may have taken a Fickers training before. And then I also oversee the ERS assessment project as well.
Great, thanks, Melissa. Jamie, you want to go next?
Sure. So I'm Jamie Smith. I am one of the ERS assessors. And for the last 7 or a little longer than 7 years, I've been doing the Fickers assessment in Iowa. We don't get a lot of requests, so that's why only one of us is in charge of those. So hopefully we'd love to do more. So like I said, I am one of the assessors, and we are actually in the process. One of our other assessors is retiring, and we're bringing on a new assessor next week. So we'll probably have a little more information about that as well tonight.
Great, thanks, Jamie. So Melissa, I'll go ahead and turn the screen over to you. I'll make you the presenter here, and then I'll just let you take it away.
And I'm actually, Jamie's going to lead tonight. So do you want, can you switch that?
Yeah, absolutely. There we go.
Okay, so we have just a quick little PowerPoint here about the environment rating scale assessments. We use 4 different scales. The yellow book is the ECHRS 3, which is for preschool ages 3 to 5. That green book is the Fickers book. We will be moving to the Fickers 3, which is the third version of the scale, and we'll get into that here in a little bit. The blue book is for infant and toddlers, and the purple book is for school age, and the yellow, blue, and purple are all for center-based programs, so probably don't need to worry about that too much tonight. And then let's see if I can, there we go. So like I said, I'm Jamie Smith, and as of the last 7 years have been doing the family child care assessments here in Iowa. Our new assessor is named Bethany, and she actually starts Monday, so we're excited to have her on board. So you may see her eventually. So if you've gone through the assessment process so far or taken the training, you've likely been trained on the Fickers R, which stands for the revised version. And we are actually moving to the Fickers 3, which is the third version. And all of the center-based program scales, we have switched over to the third version, except for the school age, because there isn't one, I guess. But so we're moving to the third version starting actually July 1st of this year. Programs that request from July 1st through the end of December can choose between the Fickers R or the Fickers 3, and then starting January 1st, 2022, we'll only be using the Fickers 3. So we've had the Fickers 3 trainings have been going since January, and we typically, when we introduce a new scale, we want to give everybody that full year to get trained and familiarized with it before we move on. So steps to request an assessment. You need to turn in your program application into QRS, and then you'll get notice from your consultant or the QRS specialist. Then they will also attach the request form that comes directly to us at ers@iastate.edu. That comes directly to the assessors. And then we will work with you to set up a date and time that works best for you and your program. We really need programs to schedule on a typical day, which I know everyone's like, what's typical, especially the last year and a half. So, but typical generally means, you know, no special visitors, no field trips, no birthday parties, things like that. We want to see what generally happens day to day in your program. We do allow programs to pick what we call blackout dates. So say I offer, you know, you requested now, you could pick, you know, 2 or 3 dates in July and August that just really would not work for you. Maybe you do have, you know, a field trip or, you know, a 4th of July party or, you know, holidays and things like that where you're going to be on vacation. We can block that out as well. So then the assessment, once we arrive, well, first off, sorry, I should back up a little. We do send you confirmation emails. We also send out, we've created a social story that kind of helps children learn about why we're there, what we're doing, why we're not talking much. So we have lots of communication back and forth. We're very open anytime, you know, somebody has a question. We can't answer absolutely everything because we are observers, but questions we can't directly answer, we can communicate with your consultant, and that's kind of how that whole process, that circle works with all of us. So that 3-hour time block is what we set aside for the visit. We really need most children present, and then that period in the morning with the most activity, that's what we want to observe. You don't want to start observing during your nap time because then we aren't seeing any of those interactions or materials and things in use. So generally we start, you know, between, like I might arrive at 8:15, I have a few quick questions and then start observing at 8:30. But it's different, especially in family child care. Recently I've had 2 programs say, hey, I really want to start at 10 a.m. That's what our schedule is, and that's totally fine. So we'll work with you and communicate all those details so we're all kind of on the same page. Oh, I wasn't behind it. So there's about the information that you receive. So we send a confirmation email right away once we set that date, and that will include your QRS specialist so that they know, hey, somebody's in my region, and they can offer that support there. And I have seen, especially with family providers, you know, notes from their consultant. I've even seen flowers from a consultant saying, good luck today. I know you're going to do great. And so that support really is out there. We also send a brochure. It's called the Ready, Set, Go brochure, and it gives you, you know, more details about the observation, why we, you know, sit back and kind of be a fly on a wall rather than talk and interact. We send that social story. That seemed to be really helpful. And then we also send that reminder a week before. Hey, we're coming. Let's double check, make sure we're both on the same page as far as arrival time and all that. So I kind of reviewed this already, but again, it's important. So we're moving to this new scale. So right now, or beginning the 1st of July, if you request an assessment, you have that choice between the FICRS-R and the new FICRS-3. Starting January 1st of 2022, if you request, then your only option is the FICRS-3. That's all we'll be using. We do that 3-hour observation, and only with the FICRS-R, we do that interview that lasts 15-20 minutes, depending on the situation. And then that will be dropped. Actually, the FICRS-3 does not require that interview. And that's probably one of the biggest changes that you'll see. After the assessment, this is kind of what's on your screen here is kind of the, it's what our feedback report looks like, that first, or actually the second page. But so we go through and we score everything in the scale. Then we go back and provide feedback. So we like to list under each subscale things that you're doing really well. Things that we saw that really stood out. We also list everything that scored a 5 or higher, and then anything that scored a 4 or lower will go in and provide details about that indicator and why it was scored the way it was. So you'll receive that feedback report within 30 days. And then at the same time we send it to the provider, we also send that to the QRS specialist so that they have that information, and your consultant can have that feedback report as well to really provide that technical assistance and help you celebrate the things that went really well and kind of evaluate other things when you're ready. So we've all, I'm sure, had very unique experiences this last year. So there were no adjustments as far as ERS. I will say we completed far fewer assessments than we normally do. But we did not change anything because that would just really kind of change the validity of the tool itself. So we really, you know, encourage programs, as we always do, is focus on those areas that you can control. You know, you can't control if your space is small or you don't have natural light. So look at those things that you can control and that you want to really work on and focus on those. And I always see family providers being super creative about, that's part of my job that I love, is seeing all these different techniques and just how people make things work for them and the children in their group. So, you know, a big part of that adjustment, especially this last year, is just being creative and finding ways to do what works for you with also working toward those quality standards. So I feel like I've just chatted a whole bunch here. So if you don't have any questions, or Melissa, if I missed anything.
There is a question in the chat box, Jamie. Modesty asks, if we request an assessment, will we have to do the 3 if we did the original a long time ago?
So yes, it depends when you request. So if you request between July 31st of this year and December 31st of this year, you can choose. You could still do the FICRS-R if that's what you're more comfortable with and that's what you know. But if you request an assessment on January 1st, 2022 or after, only the FICRS-3 is available. So it depends when you request. If you get, you know, you want to do it soon, you'd probably have time to get your application in and still use the FICRS-R. one thing I will say is, you know, I see some familiar names on here, and I know, you know, they've been through it several times, but I really recommend taking the training with the Fickers 3 because there are some big changes, and I just think it really helps everybody kind of understand the tool and what that new format is going to look like.
Great. Okay. How about, will the new QRS renewal require the Fickers 3 training for points?
I can answer that as you'd like. In the new QRS system that will roll out eventually, you can use either Fickers R or Fickers 3 for the points. The QRS system will allow for either one, but like Jamie said, if you're going for that level 5, we would highly encourage that Fickers 3 because that's what you're going to be assessed on. But as you're working through the QRS, you can use Fickers R or Fickers 3 for meeting the criteria of having the Fickers training completed.
Great, thank you, Jessie. And then what advice would you give a provider who can choose between the R or the 3, especially if they were already assessed on the R before and they did take the 3 as a training?
I would say, part of it kind of comes down to the provider's comfort level. I think everybody's going to be a little bit different. I think some providers, directors are seeing the 3rd versions and they're really excited about them and ready to move forward. They can see a lot of the things they're already doing, and others are just taking slower steps to moving that direction, and that's okay. But just make sure you're self-assessing on whichever tool you're going to be assessed on. I get if you've taken the Fickers 3, but if you want to be assessed on the Fickers R and you know you're going to have that request in before the end of the year, focus on the Fickers R then and do your self-assessments on the Fickers R until you're done with that assessment.
Great, good advice, Melissa. Anything you would add, Jamie?
No, I think Melissa's right there. Kind of maybe, I don't say go with your gut, but yeah, that comfort level that where you're at. We have people that are excited and yeah, I want to do this. And if you take the training, I think you'll realize you're already doing a lot of the things, a lot of those new indicators and requirements that you're probably already doing. It's a lot more about interactions, not just, okay, do they have these materials, but how are these materials being used with children? And how are teachers and providers talking with children as they use these materials? So I think you'll really realize that you are already doing a lot of those things. But again, like Melissa said, it's really your comfort level. If you're that, I know it and I'm comfortable, so I'm going to do one last round with this, that's totally fine too.
Great, thank you. Anyone else have any questions? How about, what would you say are the biggest changes from Fickers R to Fickers 3 other than the interview?
So, like I just said, kind of the biggest changes are really those action pieces. So, for example, before with the Fickers R, let's take blocks. So I would go in and I would look at the types of blocks you had. Are there enough for the children to use? Do they have accessories like cars and vehicles? And then do they have space to use those? And if you met all those, you would score pretty high. But with the Fickers 3, starting at that 1 level is an indicator about interactions. So say you know, you had all these wonderful materials, and the Fickers are, you probably would have scored a 6 or 7 without those block interactions. But with the Fickers 3, if you don't, you know, ask if somebody wants to play blocks or join in block play or some type of block interaction, that score is probably going to be a 1. So, and I'm not trying to scare anybody, I promise. You know, and again, if you take the training, it'll make a lot more sense than I'm trying to make right now. But it really is about how you're using those tools. And especially with family providers, you know those children. You're not someone that's coming in or seeing them every couple of weeks. You see them all the time. You know their families. You've had their siblings. If not, you have their siblings all together now. So I think that really benefits family providers is, you know, shifting that focus, not just to what materials you have, but to how those materials are used and how you're interacting with the children.
So I just want to add a little bit of background of why the authors went to a 3rd version. And it has to do a lot of it is the tool has been updated for probably 10 years or so. So, you know, things change, health and safety standards. I'm sure you're all aware, you're probably always like, what, there's a new standard for this? What's the new, you know, how many remember when we were washing our hands for 10 seconds and now it's 20 seconds? There's always something. But so there was some things like that, but then we've also just grown as a field, and we're finding that those child outcomes are really more, I say determined, but those language and interactions you have with children are going to produce those child outcomes. We're seeing, I'm like blanking how to explain this, but we're seeing that has a bigger impact on children than just the materials you provide. So we're just moving as a field from, you know, hey, we've got to provide materials to children. They need to be accessible to children. They need to be organized so children understand how to use and what to use things with, to, okay, now we're seeing that those interactions and those language, the language you use with children is really what's having the largest impact on child's development. And one more thing about the change too. So Jamie said there's no interview questions. And if you remember the last subscale, parents and provider, something like that, that is completely gone. So there's only 6 subscales now. There's space and furnishing personal care routines. There's one on listening, talking, I think it's called. Activities, interactions, and program structure, I believe, are the titles.
Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, we've gone through the same process with center-based programs as they change those scales. And anytime we go to do the interview, I feel like it just puts a lot of pressure on that provider, that teacher. And that was some of the feedback that the authors were getting as well, that teachers and providers just felt, oh, I have to say this, or I have to, you know, a lot of times I would just say, can you tell me about NAP? And they'd be like, 3 feet, they're 3 feet apart, you know. So there's just that pressure, and so it takes that away. And then, like Melissa said, it just, you know, whether or not you use the same restroom as the children or offer conferences to the parents doesn't necessarily make those long-term impacts. So that's why those were dropped.
Great, ladies. Thanks for the clarification. And I mean, you've touched on it many times, but, you know, like you said, a lot of things that you're already doing, a lot of those language pieces and things that providers are already good and great at doing, and they may not even realize they're doing it. So yeah, a lot of good things going on around interactions. So then there's another question. How long does it usually take to get from the request to actually getting the assessment completed?
So once your application is approved, we are notified, just kind of a heads up, hey, this program's approved, and you know, to keep an eye out for that request. So then you'll fill out a small form for us that gives us details about your program, you know, ages of children, hours of operation, that kind of thing. And then we'll get in touch with you and set up that date. So we're required to, if you contact me and request an assessment, I need to complete that assessment within 90 days. So it just depends on the time of year. Summer generally isn't as busy. October and May and April are probably our super, super busy times. So just depending on when you request, it might be closer to that 90 days, or if I don't have anything scheduled, I might say, hey, I can come out in 2 weeks or next week even. So just kind of depends, that we don't, you know, force you to do it, you know, the next day or anything like that. But sometime in that 3 month time period for sure.
Great, thank you. And then Amy asks, is it more like the class and or ELLCO assessment tools? Sorry, I'm not sure what she
So the Fickers 3 does, it has added more language interaction indicators in it, but it still looks at the entire program. So we're still looking at space and furnishings. We're still looking at, are there activities accessible to children, and the accessibility of, do infants have access, do school agers have access? We're still looking at health and safety. It's just there's interactions in throughout the scale as well. So rather than, it seemed like before, is either if you're looking at some interactions, it was more at the 7 level, or it's like they clumped them all together in the listening, talking, and the interaction subscale. But now it's kind of all throughout the scale, throughout all the items.
Great, thanks, Melissa. So this was a good question too that we talked about the other day. So what needs to be completed before you're QRS ready? So it's been a while since this provider's first applied. She's recently moved. And I know the other day we talked about too, you know, how best could someone prepare for a first assessment?
I can address a little bit about the QRS piece and then transition to you guys talking about that assessment component. When it comes to being QRS ready, I would say the most important thing to do would be to consult with your consultant or myself as your QRS specialist, simply because each program is so different, and the QRS right now allows you to pick from a menu of points. And so what we'll do is we'll come out and then help see what things you're already doing, and then just have conversations with you about what your goals are to then help you decide which points would be best for you. You know, and then kind of mapping out that plan. When it comes to like the ERS assessment or Fickers assessment for home providers, you know, we would definitely ask you, you know, which class you've taken, if you've done the R or the 3, and then we will look through your we call them your ERS documents, but your score sheets and those plans together, just to kind of get your comfort level of those kinds of things if you're wanting that level 5. But in terms of being ready for QRS in general, I would say just working with your consultant, because we can kind of get your baseline and where you're at, what you've already done, and then make a roadmap for each person. And, you know, I look at QRS applications every day, but none of them look the same because everybody gets to pick the points that they're going for. And so I would just say we help you make that an individualized plan. So use your consultant. And then when it comes to that ERS assessment, these guys will obviously have better answers for you than I will there. But to start, I would say working with your consultant is a good place to start.
Yes, and I would agree. I mean, we kind of this big circle here, how we all work together. And once on our confirmation email that we send, once we've picked that date, there is that reminder about the training and working with your consultant. And I think one of the other bonuses about having your consultant out to your program is that you're used to be having someone there and kind of watching you and seeing that your program and what's going on, so that when we come out to do that observation, it's not quite as nerve-wracking. You're used to having somebody watch what's going on and see you interact. So I think that it definitely helps for sure to have those people in there. And this whole process is about feedback. You know, if you go through the assessment process and we give you that feedback report, the idea is not to be, oh, you didn't score this or you missed this. The whole idea is, hey, how can we all, as providers and CCR&R and Extension, how can we all work together to provide quality childcare for children? So, you know, you're, as a provider, just as much, you know, a very big piece in this full circle as well. So, you know, this is all of us working together to reach those goals.
Yeah, and that brings up another good thing that I know we mentioned on the other meeting that we had for licensed centers, you know, but we're all really here to help you, and we all really do want to see all providers succeed. So it is kind of scary sometimes having people out into your home and in your space and, you know, watching what you're doing, but really we're not there to find anything wrong, but other than to just help you succeed and grow in your goals. So really, we're all trying to work together just to help you out. So it even if it seems like a scary thing, we're here to help you make it a not so scary thing. So. Okay, let's see. How about, do you need to come to observe when school-age children are there?
So Melissa might need to help me with this a little bit. No, it's not a requirement, and basically because typically school-age children aren't there at your busiest time of day. They're there at the very beginning or the very end, unless it's summer. So if I go out during summer and you have school-agers enrolled, I will likely see them. And then, you know, say you schedule over spring break or winter break or something like that, or no school day, then I might observe them and you know, those materials interactions for them, but it's not a requirement. We really, you know, especially when the majority of the children you work with are, you know, that infant through preschool age, which is typically what we see. So no, it's not a requirement.
Great, thank you. And then is there a cost for the FICRS 3? And if so, are there any grants available to help with the cost?
There is no cost for the assessment because it's all a part of the QRS system. There is, I'm trying to remember now, for if you take a virtual training, there's like a $5 cost. It's just a $5 fee. So it's pretty minimal. But you get the book and you get a bunch of handouts and resources to help you along the way. So the cost of the training is far less than the cost of the book and all that good stuff too. So.
And I would add with that too, Melissa, the contacts with, I mean, the face-to-face training as well, but the virtual FICRS 3 training, you're going to be with providers probably from across the state. So it's meeting those new people and, you know, having somebody to bounce ideas off of. And so that's what I hear a lot of people say that they really like is, hey, I met somebody, I didn't even realize they're 2 miles from me. And now we talk about this and that. And so that's another good part of the training as well.
Great. And then I'm not sure who might know this. Jesse, you might know this too, but when does the next online FICRS 3 training begin? If we don't know, we can.
I can answer. Well, I can answer in detail if I pull up all this stuff. But right now we kind of work on like a fiscal year, and our fiscal year runs July 1 through June 30th. So we're just wrapping up our fiscal year of trainings from this last fiscal year. Our new one will start in July, and most of our trainings start in September. If you want an exact date for like when a FICRS 3 virtual training will be in your area, there's a lot of details to this, but go ahead and just email me and I can give you exact dates if you want to just put it on your calendar to hold. Each CCR in our region, if that means anything, there's 5 different regions throughout the state, has some virtual trainings that they are opening up. Most of them, they're going to be open up to kind of the local area at first, and then eventually may open up statewide depending on if they fill the class. So like I said, lots of details, but I can definitely provide you more if you want to just give me an email.
Awesome. Melissa, do you want to put your email address in the chat box? That way people can. Awesome. Thank you. Anyone else have any questions or anything they want to share?
I would add a little bit to just preparing for your FICRs. Our hope is like once you take the FICRs class, we don't want you to just put the book away until you're ready for the assessment. We want you to keep using that book. Whether it's just opening up once a month and looking at a few items. The neat thing about this scale is, or the FICRs 3 now, we're down to 6 subscales. So eventually maybe you can work towards looking at 1 subscale a month and then revisiting it again in 6 months, or whatever makes sense to you. But you know, your program changes, you often get new children, people come and go. You know, working with children 2 to 5 and then all of a sudden adding an infant can totally change your program. So we want you to kind of revisit the scale and just looking at things again throughout the year, whatever that is, whatever it makes sense for you, however it works for you, inviting your consultant in to help you do that. That's going to probably prepare you the best, and it's not going to leave you feeling scrambled. And maybe we'll relieve some of the anxiety right before an assessment. It always makes me so nervous when I hear programs contacting their consultant 2 weeks before their assessment. It takes time to make changes, and it takes time to even just keep things steady. It takes a lot of work, so continual.
Absolutely. Okay, then another question. If a provider doesn't receive the ERS scores needed to be QRS level 5 rated, how soon can they reapply and have another assessment completed?
So I can answer that. So when a program applies for a level 5, and if they earn the level 4, then that new level 4 would be good for 2 years. But just like any other time you have any QRS rating, you're eligible to move up to a higher rating after a year. So you would be able to apply again in a year if you would like to do that.
Great question. Thanks.
And I think that's one of the nice things too about having the assessment done is they provide you such wonderful feedback. And so you can focus on all the strengths in there, but also pick up some of the areas that, you know, we could help you to improve your score as well. And so that feedback you get is so helpful, and it's just really enlightening and helpful. And so I think that's to have the assessment done is just such a wonderful learning opportunity, and then it provides you that feedback that you can utilize with those tools. And like Melissa was talking about, the whole intent is that it's ongoing quality and that it's a continuous process. And so we wouldn't ever want you to just pull out your FICRs and have it be a snapshot in time today because they're coming tomorrow, but rather tools we're continuously working on. And so, you know, getting your feedback, and whether you score below a 5 or above a 5, we still want to, you know, help you to improve in whatever ways you're looking to do that. And so, but in terms of QRS, you'd be able to apply a year later if that's what you'd like.
Awesome. Thank you, Jessie. Anybody else have any questions or any thoughts to share? All right, well, if that is it, and that's all for your questions tonight, remember that you can always lean on your child care resource and referral consultant, Jesse. You can email me if you need anything, and I will get you in contact with the right person who can answer your question. I know Jesse's happy to work with lots of providers as well as your consultant. Even the ISU assessors, thank you so much for being here tonight, and thank you for being available for our providers. We're all in this together to help you, so my contact information is up on the screen. So if you need anything, feel free to reach out to me. You can reach out directly to Melissa or Jesse or any of the resources that we've talked about tonight. So I'll send out this recording at the end of the meeting and feel free to share it with anyone. There is another peer-to-peer meeting about health and safety next Wednesday. So if you haven't given me your RSVP for that, go ahead and email me and I will send you the link for that as well. So thank you so much for taking a little over 40 minutes out of your evening for us tonight. We really appreciate it, and we hope that you enjoyed the meeting and you learned some new things. So thanks for joining us.